In 1977, when gas prices were climbing and compact cars were taking over American roads, Chrysler still had something very different to offer. It was huge, it was heavy, and it had a 440 cubic inch V8 engine under the hood. This was the 1977 Chrysler Newport. At a time when other companies were downsizing, Chrysler seemed to double down on big. The 1977 Chrysler Newport was part of the fourth generation of the model, which had been in production since 1974. It used the Chrysler C-body platform, which meant unibody construction and a massive footprint. The car came in three versions: a two-door hardtop coupe, a four-door sedan, and a four-door hardtop. The custom trim was dropped for this year, leaving just the standard Newport model on sale. Chrysler offered a range of engines for the Newport, but the most powerful one was the 440 cubic inch V8, part of the RB series. This engine made 195 horsepower at 3,600 revolutions per minute and produced 320 pound-feet of torque at just 2,000 revolutions per minute. That much torque, delivered so early, made the car move smoothly despite weighing about 4,500 pounds. It used a 4-barrel Carter carburetor and a compression ratio of 8.2 to 1. The engine was paired with Chrysler's 3-speed TorqueFlite automatic transmission. To try and save a bit of fuel, Chrysler installed its lean burn system. It used a basic computer to adjust ignition timing. That might not sound like much now, but back then it was a pretty new idea. It was not perfect, but Chrysler thought it would help with emissions and gas mileage. The body measured 226.6 inches long and 79.7 inches wide. The wheelbase was 124 inches. These numbers made the Newport one of the largest cars in its class. Inside, the car was all about space. The seats were large bench types and could be ordered in cloth and vinyl or fancy Williamsburg cloth. Power steering and power brakes came standard. Air conditioning was an option. The dashboard had wide, easy-to-read gauges, and the controls were laid out in a way that made sense. In terms of production, Chrysler made 399,297 cars in total during 1977, and a good number of those were Newports. Specifically, there were 10,566 two-door hardtops, 14,808 four-door hardtops, and 32,508 four-door sedans. By the time 1977 rolled around, the oil crisis from 1973 had changed what many buyers wanted in a car. People were looking for smaller, cheaper vehicles with better fuel economy. Still, the Newport managed to hold on a bit longer. It appealed to drivers who liked the comfort of a big American car and were not ready to give it up yet. The Newport was not flashy or sporty, but it was roomy and powerful. And, in its final years, it stood as one of the last full-size sedans from Chrysler before everything started to shrink. In the late 1970s, American families had a very different idea of what a cool car looked like. Forget sleek sports cars or fancy imports. If you were packing up kids, luggage, and maybe even a dog, you needed something long, wide, and powered by a V8. One car fit that bill with quiet confidence: the 1977 Pontiac LeMan Safari wagon. It looked like a grocery getter, but under the hood, it could surprise you. The 1977 Pontiac LeMan Safari was built by Pontiac, a division of General Motors. It was part of the A-body lineup, also known as the Colonnade design, which had been introduced in 1973. By 1977, this platform was in its final year before General Motors switched to smaller designs. So this wagon was the last of the big-body LeMan Safaris. It had a long 116-inch wheelbase and a total length of about 216 inches. That is longer than some small buses today. The curb weight came in at around 4,200 pounds, which meant this car was not built for quick takeoffs unless you picked the right engine. And yes, there were choices. The base engine was a Pontiac 301 cubic inch V8. It made around 135 horsepower. Not very exciting, but enough to get you to school or the hardware store. If you wanted more power, Pontiac offered a 350 cubic inch V8 and a 400 cubic inch V8. That last one, the 400, was a 6.6-liter engine that gave this family wagon some muscle. In California, buyers also had the option for the Oldsmobile-built 403 cubic inch V8, mostly to meet local emission laws. All these engines were paired with a 3-speed turbo-hydromatic automatic transmission. Pontiac did not offer a manual transmission for the V8 models, probably because they assumed most buyers did not want to shift gears with a car full of kids screaming in the back. Inside, the Safari was built for comfort and space. It had room for up to 8 people. The rear seats could be folded down to create a large cargo area, perfect for suitcases, sports gear, or a very large grocery haul. Trim options varied, so you could get cloth or vinyl seats depending on your budget or your level of tolerance for cleaning up spilled juice. Pontiac gave the Safari a few upgrades for 1977. The grille and taillights got small updates. The car also had Pontiac's radial-tuned suspension, which helped it handle better than you might expect for something this size. This was the end of the line for the big LeMan Safari. Starting in 1978, Pontiac downsized its wagons. That makes the 1977 model something of a farewell to the era of giant family wagons with real muscle. It might have looked like it belonged in a school parking lot, but if you checked the badge and looked under the hood, you would know this thing could move, even if it had a roof rack. In the early 1970s, something new rolled out from Buick that made people take a second look. It was not flashy like a Corvette, and it was not as long as a Cadillac, but it had its own serious presence. The name was Buick Centurion. And in 1971, this car was ready to prove that a muscle car did not always have to shout. Sometimes it just had to rumble, and this one did, with a massive engine and a name borrowed from Roman history. The 1971 Buick Centurion was not Buick's first time using the name. It actually showed up earlier in 1956 as a concept car at General Motors' Motorama show. That version looked like something from the future, with a fiberglass body, bubble-shaped roof, and even a rear camera. That camera part sounds normal now, but back then, it was wild. When the production Centurion came out in 1971, it was a totally different car. Buick created it to replace the Wildcat. The Centurion sat between the Buick LeSabre and the Electra 225 in size. It used the same B-body platform as the LeSabre and came with a wheelbase of 124 inches. What made it different was the styling. It had no ventiports, those little holes on the fenders that Buicks usually had. Instead, it used a helmet logo of a Roman centurion, which gave it a strange but bold look. Some people said it looked serious, others said it looked like a luxury tank. The two-door version of the 1971 Centurion had something under the hood that made people respect it, a 455 cubic inch V8 engine. That is 7.5 liters in size. This engine made 315 horsepower at 4,400 revolutions per minute and 510 pound-feet of torque at 2,800 revolutions per minute. The compression ratio was 8.5 to 1. That engine had enough power to pull a boat, a house, or maybe even your grumpy neighbor's truck off the driveway. It came with a 3-speed turbo-hydromatic automatic transmission. It used a 4-barrel carburetor to feed that massive V8. The front suspension was independent with coil springs. The rear had a live axle with coil springs. Brakes were power-assisted discs up front. The steering used a variable ratio power system, which helped when parking this 260-pound beast. Inside, the Centurion had a notchback bench seat with a center armrest. You could get it in cloth and vinyl or full vinyl. Options included air conditioning, power windows, power seats, and even fancy touches depending on the trim. In total, Buick made 11,892 of the 1971 two-door Centurions. There were also 15,345 four-door sedans and 2,161 convertibles. The car may not have had a long run, but it sold better than the Wildcat it replaced. Today, the 1971 Buick Centurion two-door coupe is not talked about as much, but it still has a following. It represents a time when cars were huge, engines were bigger, and a helmet on the grille somehow made sense. In the middle of the 1970s, the American car market was going through some strange times. Gas prices were rising, Emissions rules were tightening, and yet somehow a full-size sedan with a huge 401 cubic inch V8 engine rolled off the assembly line. It came from a company that always did things a bit differently, American Motors Corporation. And the car? The 1975 AMC Matador sedan. It looked like a basic big-body cruiser, but under the hood, it could give some muscle cars a hard time. And no, it was not a one-off concept, it was real, and it was fast. But it was also rare. American Motors Corporation, known as AMC, was based in Kenosha, Wisconsin. By the mid-1970s, AMC was already struggling to compete with the big three, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. To stay in the game, they needed something that stood out. So, in 1975, they introduced an updated version of their full-size sedan, the AMC Matador. This version came with new styling on the outside, updated taillights, a wide, full-length grille, and square parking lamps. For those who wanted a little extra comfort, AMC also introduced a Brougham trim level that added more luxury features. But the real story lies with the police package Matador, especially the one with the 401 cubic inch V8 engine. That engine was a beast. It made 255 horsepower at 4,600 revolutions per minute and 345 pound-feet of torque at 3,300 revolutions per minute. It used a 4-barrel Autolite, 4,350 carburetor, and had a 9.5 to 1 compression ratio. Paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission, the Matador sedan could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 7 seconds. That was not bad at all for a big 4-door car. This version of the Matador was mostly built for police work. Agencies like the Los Angeles Police Department started using them because they were quick and durable. They came with heavy-duty suspension, reinforced frames, and high-output alternators. Inside, they had simple dashboards and basic seating, but they were built to handle long hours on the road. AMC only made 89 of these 401 V8 Matadors in 1975. 4 were coupes, and 85 were either sedans or wagons. Most went to law enforcement fleets. If you saw one on the road back then, chances are it had flashing lights and a siren. The 1975 AMC Matador might not be as famous as other cars from that era, but it played an important role. It was in police garages, not car shows. It showed up in a James Bond film, The Man with the Golden Gun, where it even turned into a flying car. And now it is mostly forgotten. But for a moment in 1975, AMC built a full-size sedan that could outrun your neighbor's Camaro and then take your neighbor to jail.